You can't put on your point.
Okay, this meeting has been advertised in one newspaper, the Daily.
Councilwoman Garcia Montez.
Okay, tonight's meeting. Discussion, Chief.
Based on guidance that I previously got, we have our conversation flat as is possible to last year. Off that conversation. Preliminary revenues are looking at an uncertain increase in the assessment for the garbage collection because we're going out to rebid that. So it's overall the at this time last year, we don't have that information yet. If we get awarded a community we had 80 budgeted last year for the that has been full spots, which changed the way. We had another tough year. Apparently there was nobody out speeding from the officials' revenue. After having a really power hazard, what I could see from the cash receipt records were all we do not. So we look at the hazard in sewers.
Excuse me, Joe. You have another copy?
I gave a spare copy to Kendall for Tara, but I can certainly make a. So that's where we are at with the revenues. I am anticipating far less in interest income this year because of the changes in the market. We did manage to make our interest number for last year, $35,000, but I don't see that happening again this year with the rates having fallen the way that they have. Okay. The only reason we made the revenue number for 2020 was the day that there's no way we can make $35,000 in interest again this year. I am hoping the market makes a comeback during 2021. We're gonna have to wait and see what happens. Okay. So we're looking at a far lower number for interest this year. Okay.
And, excuse me, Joe, and you did say we made 35,000 in interest this year?
36,928.12.
36, okay.
What turned into a short-term market fall-off has lasted now over a year, and now lasted for the things that the resurgent economy was allowing us to do was to make some money with our free money. So to keep the budget lean and mean, I've lightened our capital contribution this year from 35,000 down to 20. But it's not mandatory that we put money into the capital improvement fund every year. And we're sitting on over 8. Most of the projects that we've been running for the last couple of years have been, we've been using a lot of grants in that area. So we've not been relying very heavily on the dollars that have been banked in capital. We're doing most of our new projects through community development and through the Department of Transportation. So I'm backing off. I put a lot of money into CDBG this past year, but that was the plan. We're bringing in would help bolster the capital improvement fund going forward. It would be a nice way to save that money long term for future projects. If the market recovers, that's going to be the plan again going forward. Okay. The borough's long-standing policy of not issuing debt to get things done around here.
Mm-hmm. And excuse me, Joe, you did say on the CDBG grant.
To do that whole project, we're going to realize all that revenue. We have our award yet for 21.
Yes.
The revenues right now.
Okay, what is the alcoholic beverage?
Those in case one of the businesses shutters and goes away.
The liquor store?
The show place, since they're basically out of business over there.
Yeah, that liquor license is going to be their biggest asset though. If they don't renew it, it'll revert back to the town and someone else will come buy their biggest selling. Be the way it is everywhere else. Anywhere there's worth $100,000.
Whatever they want, pretty much. Market.
There's a studio in there.
Collections, we had construction, sewer. We go back to forward. So this aren't going to use every year to support the tax. It's going to be gone. And the day that reserve is gone, you're looking at an instantaneous 7% tax hit across the board. That reserve had such a tough year on surplus around
what we just raised, it's going up 39% more.
We had a conversation last week about changing the sewer rates. That was not taxes.
Talking about the silver, I'm talking about taxes.
I'm talking, yeah, just taxes, 3.5, yes. I am, for the purposes of today's discussion and conversation, I factored in that full 3.5% to see what, to see what we need to balance the budget. No authority to go to 3.5. It's been largely unchanged, and everything else has been kind of held. Annual audit, $2 increase in their revenue to cover that cost of the audit. So their raise would be factored with, again,
Where we could take some of it off.
less additional money in the budget. Okay? The garbage contract, which we talked about, unfortunately, where you were right in the RVRSA line item, I have not adjusted that number alone. The rest of the line items that are in the budget, there are some departments that we do set aside some money for contingencies in case they need them, but they're very small dollars. Planning board, the slash and the evaders can be had. Yes, the letter that they gave us at the beginning of the year indicated that their monthly was going to be coming down.
Right.
That's a significance. That's what happened. Letter has full on desk. I didn't bring the folder in with me because again, I knew we had enough budget to cover the RVRSA. But again, should anything change there, or the lawsuit goes away, they continue to ask us for more money, or they continue to bill us more money for the legislation, because ironically, we're paying for the RVRSA legislation in two places. The RVRSA builds it into their assessment, and we build it into what we set aside for film. So, fight for ourselves. But, yeah, it did indicate based on their calculations of savings.
And you have litigation,
That's a question best
you know, like, well.
named in council. That's why we've left a good cushion in both spots.
Right.
You know, I don't like to see line items that we don't have a whole lot of control over. Yaw high and low every year. I mean, the year before this year, our RVRSA was for a 27% increase. And you start messing with our cap calculation, and you start taking those costs and letting them go up and down and up and down. And you run into problems with our cap-based adjustment, you run into our ability, you run into where you're impacting our ability to have a steady cap. So, you know, you don't like to see that number yaw wildly from year to year. Okay.
Now, in the row, on the line item, row O&E, we budgeted $60,000, right?
Road OE, yes, sir.
Last year and this year,
Yes, sir.
but we only used half of it,
Yes, sir.
just about half of it. Now, can we adjust that a little lower?
Well, you could, but we've been budgeting that number because the last 2 years, we haven't had a lot of snow. Okay? Look at the start that 2021 is off to.
Okay.
Okay? I mean, another salt contract came in a little bit lower, but we're looking at another 7 inches this week, from what I understand. Gonna get whacked again. And we got another couple of months before we're out of the woods and into the spring. And then we have to worry about the upcoming October, November, December. I'm not sure that Road OE is a good line item to be looking to adjust this year. One of the things that we can look into, and it's something that hasn't been done here before because we've kind of relied on the unexpended balances of those appropriations to lapse back to the town, is we can set up a storm emergency trust. It's something that a lot of other municipalities do, and it allows them to take the unexpended balances from the road OE, and it allows you to not let them lapse back to surplus. It allows you to set them aside for future emergencies, future storms. It started out as a snow emergency trust. And back with Katrina and Irene, for municipalities that asked to repurpose those funds to fight the hurricane damage. That's something that has not been done here. It's a tool that certainly we can explore, so that when we have years like we've had the last two, where the sewer or the road OE doesn't fully spend out, we can earmark their dollars, and it would allow us to budget a little closer to the vest, because we have a savings bank for them to dig into in case of a really bad storm, and we would have run out of money in that appropriation. It's something we can explore. It's something, like I said, it hasn't been done here before, but it's not a bad tool to have. But for this particular upcoming year, based on the way 21's off to, the start we're off to with the snow, I don't know that I'd feel comfortable adjusting that line item down.
And that's on road O and E, you're saying?
Be a road over here.
I'd say it could be adjusted a little, because it's like, we have, what is that?
Well, again, that's with no appreciable snow for the last 2 years. We've already had more snow in the month of February.
That we have included the purchase of the truck,
No,
well, that was the year before.
years too. Whether or not you're gonna wanna replace any of those trucks. Yeah,
Yeah, I thought they were, but they're fine, I think
They're
they're
in good
running,
condition.
yeah.
doing okay for now? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe wanna take a look at getting them quote unquote reconditioned. There are places that do that. You know, a good once over.
I don't see any place where we can save any money.
I looked, like I said, and believe me, Road OE would start that we were off to. I'm almost worried it was enough. The fact that the salt bid came in lower than it has from Cargill's, probably gonna help us out quite a bit.
Yeah.
But we're gonna probably take a good hard look and see where we are at with these guys, and get us into the spring before we make any kind of decision. And maybe, we can, if there is a little place where we've got a couple of bucks that I'm not gonna spend, we can then look at redistributing the pie a little bit when we get into November.
Remember, the salt is gonna go up, because there's probably gonna be a shortage this year. Or I should say, this season.
I would have thought before we found out that the salt bid was coming down, that you would have seen an increase just because I was actually surprised that the salt came in lower than last year. We might want to take a look at seeing where we can stockpile some. So that
The old stuff that we had in there, because it's been in there, usually when the truck comes in, old stuff is staying in the back, so,
it doesn't really stir easily.
yeah.
3.5%.
I did. I can knock that down to 2, and we can look at using a little bit more fund balance.
That would be good. 2%.
At the second meeting before we get ready to introduce.
Yeah, why don't you show it, would you be able to give us the difference between the two and
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
to the 3.5?
I can almost do right. And take another 11,000 out of fund balance. This past year, we used 319 and used it to support the 2020 budget. Okay. We no longer have that condition. I was trying to get the surplus anticipated back down to 375, which is what we had, back up to 379. So I can split the difference with that too, maybe do a 2.5% to get that number back to 375.
And pretty much per house, 200.
Well, per house, that's a whole separate calculation that I wasn't ready to do tonight. Do 2.5 of the 2.
And so,
No, you're welcome. And again, that's kind of what, the first meeting, we'll lay it all out there, we'll get some direction, we'll figure out where we want to go, and then we can generate some more what-if scenarios. The only thing that I knew we wanted to do, or that I really wanted to try to do from jump, was cut costs as little as we could by not having raises in the budget and by lowering our capital by about 15 grand. Actually, I lowered our capital by half. I took it from 47 down to 20. Okay? Because we had set aside some money in there to do some tree removal as well. okay? And that's a big deal, okay? But, you know, in the hopes that the economic climate's gonna continue, then, you know, we'll go back to putting that money away long term for capital again, okay? I always like saving for the future. It's always, I think, a good thing. And like I said, we've been very, very lucky the last couple of years with the grants that have come our way, but we haven't had to dip into those capital dollars and do some of the road work and the firehouse improvements that we did this year. It's always a bonus. Okay? I don't like counting on bonuses.
Are we still the only municipality that doesn't owe?
No,
Who else?
last I checked, Butler had very little debt as well, because Butler has their own self-liquidating electric utility up there. So many residents outside of town, they throw a lot of their utility fund surplus back into the current fund budget utility. I think the only other municipally run electric utility in the state, in our state, may have debt. Butler's had a very nice pay-as-you-go luxury for a really. Being debt-free is a nice way to do business. It is.
It's been for a long time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
And,
yeah.
It is.
Mhm.
I just want us to be able to stay there. Just bearing in mind, like I said, we have some revenues that have a limited shelf life. Okay, like I said, eventually, in another 18 years, that reverse school tax is going to be gone. Now, I don't know that I'm going to be here in 18 years, and I don't know if you're going to be here.
It's not gonna merge with Dover or someone else.
Well, that's the thing. You know, that'll be somebody else's cash stream. Someday the state may wake up on municipal consolidation. And I know that I'm probably one of the few government professionals that's in favor of it, because there's 65 municipal fiefdoms to worry about. It's a revelation. And here in New Jersey, there are a lot of towns that honestly could stand to be part of a bigger community. We've managed to accomplish a lot of those things through some of our existing partnerships.
Doing a good job, Joe.
Well,
Thank you.
I am sustaining the work that I inherited. Okay, relating debt, where we are able to do quite a bit with what we have, and I'm just trying to leave it in good shape for the folks that come in, not just after me, but after you guys as well. And that's why I know that I'm not going to be here in 18 years, because my retirement plan is 6, 10, maybe, God willing. But someday someone's going to have to take a look at some of these revenues that, like I said, have a shelf life, and figure out how to navigate the borough's course in the future. And that's why I always like to say, where we can save for any day where we can, we should. Okay.
Good. All right.
Everybody got anything else that they want to
Any
see
other
for the next
questions?
budget meeting besides what the impact on a house would be at 2, 2.5, and 3.5% for tax rate? Okay. I could generate those 3 scenarios. Okay. And let you know how we make out.
Okay, good. Well, with that, I'd like a motion to open the meeting to the public.
So motion to open our meeting to the public.
All in favor?
Need to start the clock yet, I hope.
How you doing, man?
Let me ask you, when is the next revale being done for the town? Anybody know?
No, we haven't talked about it, because normally I think Mark always, did whatever on a yearly basis.
I thought all the towns had to do it every 10 years. I don't remember the last time it was done.
Depends on your definition of a reval. The tax assessor has the authority to go out and assess properties
Right.
on his own annually without,
Which is what Mark did.
yeah. He can review the assessments of properties as he sees fit.
What's the total cash and investments we have sitting in the bank? I didn't hear anybody ask about that.
Currently sitting on around 2.8 million.
Okay. And what's the balance of the money where you talked about the money from the old school board that we're using offset taxes before 18, so we got 18 years left.
Yep. But it's gonna go away someday.
49,000 or 48?
48.
Okay. You mentioned about the fees for RBRSA legal. They were coming in two different line items?
They're part of,
Two legal fees, where is that? Because I got the, probably the same stuff you got, and I don't know where you're getting two legal litigation fees. Because I see the one is under $4,000 for Jersey City, which is included in our sewer fees. Where's the other portion of litigation?
with our council.
That's not what you said though. You said
Yes, it
it's
is.
from RBRSA.
There is a portion, there is a litigation assessment built in for assessment from the RBRSA. And then there are the fees that we pay to council.
Okay, but that whole litigation thing is winding down. I mean, they're getting close to an end on it. So those fees should not be sitting there too long.
We don't know how long.
From your lips, from your lips to God's ears.
From my, my source, which I can't reveal. Okay? You said revenues from the court fees were down. How much down were they? Because, you know what, last year's fees.
They were down by $1,200 over what we budgeted, and that was a fall from the year before.
So we're only down $1,200. That's it?
Well, gee, yes, and a revenue item that we anticipated 3,000 out of, yeah, we lost almost half of it. So that's material.
Okay.
And we had budgeted 5,000 the year before, and we didn't get there. So court revenues have been in a steady decline for the last 3 years.
All right, and, one thing I mentioned this before, you talked about revenue. You want instant revenue, at least to help this year? Why don't you sell the property up there by the condos? And then you'll generate yearly revenue. You know how much money we're losing yearly on that? I mean, just average it out. What are we using it for? Really, nothing. It's a buildable lot. Why don't you sell it? I mean, that should generate you probably
Buildable, that's.
$50,000.
That's not buildable.
Yeah, it's a buildable lot. Based on your, it's a buildable lot. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so why does the council think about that? Because they sold a piece of land here in the borough, it went for $76,000. You could easily get probably 50 for that. That's $50,000 you didn't have, and you don't even utilize it. For the school costs,
Not at the present time.
well, what was
One ended up being significantly higher, but we don't have any control over what the school board does.
Alright, but I'm a little confused exactly what he replies to me. For transportation. There are 2 special education students who have required transportation. The students have been remote since the first, that the borough hasn't paid any fees. I mean, I see on the voucher report every month we keep paying that monthly fee, which includes transportation, right?
We always said yes, that it included transportation because we never got anything separate.
So I think the total, if you total it out, I think we pay them what, $9,000 or $10,000 a month? Comes to about 1.2 million. I mean, that's what I think we pay the school budget every year, about 1.2 million. 1.1, 1.2. But that's factored into the taxes too.
Right.
It is. There are 3 components, actually there are 4 components to your tax rate.
Right, I understand that. But what I'm talking about is the school, because you don't even know what that's gonna be, because according to Mr. Minkwitz, borough has been paying for transportation. And I thought we were in that monthly fee.
Yeah, that's what we say too.
And the
Because
schedule
I don't think
according
we've
to-
ever received a separate,
Right, you know.
right.
And according to the schedule, what they were going to increase, transportation was going up to about $265. So if they're saying that, well, we didn't include it with the building that you've been paying, now we're gonna slap you with a $265,000 increase. Now you gotta factor that in your budget, because, you know, that's gonna be $265,000 you gotta come up with.
That doesn't get factored in the budget, that gets factored in the tax rate.
Right, it'll get that, they know what I'm talking about. I'm not saying it's in the municipal budget, I'm talking about overall with the town. Because you're talking about raising taxes 2%, 1%, 3%, you know, whatever. How come we can't just have it 0%? You know, I mean, and you have no control over it. So maybe you should look at 0%.
0% interest?
No, increase, municipal.
Okay, I'd like a motion to close the meeting to the public.
The motion to close meeting to the public.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Joe, what would it be, what would the difference be if we had 0%, like you just said?
We would lose.
Being zero, just having a 0% tax increase would mean I would have the last year's tax rate, which would be about 20. If I were to shift that number back to fund balance, that would not be the best idea, because when you go to the well over and over and over again, sooner or later the well is empty. And all the conversation we just had about saving for a rainy day goes down the toilet.
Yeah. Any other questions, council? I'd like a motion to adjourn the meeting.
The motion to adjourn. Next meeting, 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Next week we have council.
Council,
And then budget
and
again.
budget.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, good night, Mr. Glass. Good night. Did you get your shot yet on?
No, I never even started it.